Pat McAfee Show. Aaron Rodgers agrees with Tom Brady, saying today's NFL is mediocre. So we're going to have a discussion here on the mediocrity of the NFL right now. So I'm not totally sure what they're talking about as far as I guess they're talking about the product, like the watchability, the product on the field. And I would say that is mediocre. I think if you look at the quarterback play, if you look at the offenses, we've seen a lot of bad offenses this year. A lot of, whether it's Pittsburgh, with Matt Canada's situation, whether it's the Saints with Pete Carmichael's situation, or just a lot of the teams kind of in flux, kind of in this transitionary period where, like the Raiders, they got Aiden O'Connell, they fired their head coach. There's a lot of the Giants, Tommy DeVito out there. There's a lot of journeyman quarterback playing. There's a lot of injuries happening. So all those things put together, the product is kind of mediocre compared to where it's been in the past. But these cycles happen. These cycles in the NFL happen where franchise quarterbacks either get hurt, retire, whatever, and then teams have to scramble and figure out, okay, what's the next move? What's the next era that we're in? Right now, a lot of teams that's happening to at the exact same time.
Tom Brady was on the Stephen A. Smith show, and he talked about mediocrity around the NFL. We actually have the clip. I don't know if you've seen it. Here's Tom Brady chit-chatting about the current state of the NFL.
I think there's a lot of mediocrity in today's NFL. Yeah. I don't see the excellence that I saw in the past.
Why not? Why not?
I think the coaching isn't as good as it was. I don't think the development of young players is as good as it was. The rules have allowed a lot of bad habits to get into the actual performance of the game. Mm-hmm. So I just think the product, in my opinion, is less than what it's been. I look at a lot of players like Ray Lewis and Rodney Harrison and Ronnie Lott and guys that impacted the game in a certain way, and every hit they would have made would have been a penalty. Your coach is
So the penalty side of things, it does hinder defensive players from being as impactful as they were in the past because of pass interference calls, or because of roughing the passer calls, or because of targeting, or whatever else. Having Ray Lewis out there, having Brian Urlacher out there, even Brian Dawkins and Ed Reed, players like that, it does limit them of being impactful. And he's right too about the coaching. If you look across the league, there's bad coaches everywhere. I mean, really bad coaches. So even the good coaches are saddled with bad quarterbacks, or saddled with, like, Belichick. Belichick in his situation, where whether it's Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi or Malik Cunningham or whatever, but yeah, I think it's the top end is really good, and unfortunately, the top end even is taking a hit. Teams like Cincinnati, where top end team, high talent, high level quarterback play, high level offensive weapons. Boom, Burrow gets hurt. What can you do? So the Jets, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, that would have been a lot of fun to watch. That would have been excellence. And now watching the Jets is a train wreck because you watch Zach Wilson. So yeah, I do agree the game probably isn't as good as it was. I mean, if you really think about it, like when I grew up, early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s in the NFL, there was impactful players in a lot of different areas, whether it was defensive, running the game, quarterback, coaches, whatever. Now, the game is pretty much impacted, I would say, 80-ish% by the quarterback. It's kind of becoming almost like a 7-on-7 game. Even running backs don't impact the game like they used to. Having Steven Jackson for the Rams, or LaDainian Tomlinson for the Chargers, or if you go further back and you've got the Barry Sanders or the Emmitt Smith or whatever, they were impactful, dominating, take over the game. That's who you're watching, superstars. And now it's not the case. Even like the Christian McCaffreys of the world, he is impactful, but he's only as impactful as the rest of his offense will allow him to be. He's almost like an accoutrement to the rest of the offense. No longer do we see the LaDainian Tomlinson or the Steven Jacksons. Then, like I said, we're talking about defenses where a Dwight Freeney or a pass rusher can really dominate the game. Myles Garrett is probably the only guy, maybe Micah Parsons, that every play you're watching them disrupt the game, really impact the game. But linebacker-wise, who would you say is the best linebacker in the NFL? Who would you say is the Ray Lewis, the Brian Urlacher, that kind of guy where he's on the field, you're terrified of him being involved in a play. You're terrified of Ed Reed or Brian Dawkins. Is there a safety like that in the game? Cornerbacks, or is there cornerbacks in the game that are locking people down, shutting people down like they used to? Kind of not. It's so offensive oriented. It's so passing game oriented. Like I said, it's become a 7-on-7 game product that when you have bad quarterback play, when the whole focus of the NFL is on quarterbacks and you've got terrible quarterbacks all over the place, it makes the product kind of rough.
Complaining about their own player being tackled and not necessarily, why don't they talk to their player about how to protect himself? We used to work on the fundamentals of those things all the time. Now they're trying to be regulated all the time. Offensive players need to protect themselves. It's not up to a defensive player to protect the offensive player. A defensive player needs to protect himself. I didn't throw the ball to certain areas because I was afraid players were going to get knocked out. That's the reality. Wow. I didn't throw it to the middle when I played Ray Lewis because you knock him out of the game, and I couldn't afford to lose a good player.
Aaron, do you agree with that? And what do you think is leading up to that? Is it the young guys can't handle the same things you guys can handle back, and you're kind of one of the last of the Mohicans of the old guard, Peyton, Tom, all you guys doing those things? What do you think is leading to that?
Joe Flacco.
7.
Thank you.
Footsteps. My bad. I left footsteps out.
Sorry.
Phil.
Matt Ryan.
Drew Brees.
Matty Ice. 7.
Sorry.
Yeah, but again, the people they just named are Hall of Fame level, MVP level. Some of those guys are like top 5 ever. You know, the Brees, Manning, Brady, Rodgers even. So it's less about being tough, or it's less about the physicality of the game or the penalties or whatever. It's the fact that you're talking about a huge, I mean, you can really, the list is nuts. Like, just think about the players that we've seen leave the game in the last 5 years. Whether it's Phillip Rivers or Ben Roethlisberger or Eli Manning or Matt Ryan or Cam Newton or Drew Brees or Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers is out. You know, who knows how much longer he's got. Those 9 guys right there, I could just keep going, you know, but like those 9 guys, those are generational, franchise-defining, Hall of Fame level players who everyone is trying to replace. And it's hard to do that. It's really hard to replace half the league having Hall of Fame level, super efficient, super productive quarterbacks. It's hard to replace that. And the NFL said, let's make it more about the quarterback to illuminate the problem even more.
Big Ben.
Great question. I saw the clip, and definitely I think as much as anything, I agree with the last thing that he said, and is that the rule changes have created a lot of bad habits. And, you know, when I was a young player too, the greatest fear you have as a quarterback is getting one of your guys hurt. You know, throwing the ball high over the middle, exposing the guy and him getting rocked and him leaving the game. That was your biggest fear. So you were smart about certain plays and throws of just not making them. And I think, you know, if I'm looking at this from a real big picture, like there's a softening of society that has definitely caused things like this. Look at all the sports. You know, what happened to hockey? Hockey doesn't have the enforcer position anymore. Why? Because we need the fighting out of.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I mean, yeah, I hate to get all philosophical here, but I don't think it has anything to do with the softening of society. I think it's the level of play. I think it's a perfect storm of we're highlighting a position that's not very good right now, and because of that, it has a trickle-down effect. If we still had Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan at his peak, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Cam Newton at his peak, if we still had those guys in the NFL, we would not be sitting here saying, man, this is kind of a mediocre product we're watching. If we had Aaron Rodgers versus Drew Brees on primetime, if we had Phillip Rivers versus Matt Ryan with a 45 to 43 game, if we had Drew Brees dueling with Peyton Manning, no one is saying, damn, this is a really soft product. And I don't think anybody would consider those guys like John Wayne. I mean, those guys aren't exactly Rambo and Terminator. Just because we're having penalties, I guess, of like roughing the passer and all that, that's not exclusively it. So the softening of society thing, I don't know about all that.
Hockey is too violent.
Well, stage.
You know, and people don't want to see the violence on TV. I think people want to see football be a collision sport, and not, to where guys are getting mangled on the field. But
I agree with that. But on the same token, I don't think if you increase the violence, I don't think the watchability is any better. Like I do think the NFL is a collision sport. I think people do want to see defense. They do want to see big hits. They do want to see whatever. But if you told me like let's just make the NFL as violent as possible. Allow everything. Allow just roughing the passer, helmet on helmet. Allow the most violent hits you've ever seen. I don't think all of a sudden people are like, God, I love watching this. I can't stop watching this. Like people just want to be entertained. And I think they can be entertained with a lot of different ways. They can be entertained with a 55-54 shootout between two really good quarterbacks. But what they are not entertained by is 13-10 Cleveland-Pittsburgh. They're not entertained by quarterbacks having 110 yards passing in a game. That's what they're not entertained with. They're not entertained by field goals and punts and third and 8, balls getting thrown out of bounds. They're not entertained by that. And there's a lot of that right now. The Pittsburgh-Cleveland game that we just watched a couple days ago, that Cleveland wins, where Pittsburgh had literally one play that was good with the Jaylen Warren long run. I don't care if there's a million collisions in that game. You could have put a monster truck rally in the middle of the field, and that game would have been interesting. People do not want to see Zach Wilson go 11 for 37 for 103 yards passing and no touchdowns. They don't want to see that. So I would steer further away from the violence being the problem.
They enjoy the big hits, and there's certain players who you just knew were big hitters and would push the line of what's a cheap shot and what's a legit hit. But it's tough to play defense in the league. It is really tough.
For sure.
I saw a couple of the calls last night and just thinking, that was not how it used to be. You used to play the Lions, you get rocked, just about every snap you're taking, dropping back, you're getting hit, you're getting pushed, and if you go back and look at some of the film on some of those games, I'm talking like 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah. The game was reffed definitely a little bit different back then. Is it better in certain areas for player safety? 100%. Have we gone too far in certain rules? 100% as well. And I think it's really hard to play defense. It's really hard to figure out the strike zone, especially with the moving player. I think we've created bad habits in the some of the reads and the zero fear of throwing over the middle. I think we're some of the quarterbacks are getting rewarded for sliding late at times and taking very light shots that become 15-yard penalties. Obviously, Kareem Jackson is in the news.
I think people just want to watch really good players. Like when we were watching Mike Vick, it was awesome to see him at his best, right? It was awesome to see him running around, making amazing plays. So no one wanted to see Mike Vick just getting rocked. No one was like, man, you know what I love watching? I love watching Peyton Manning take an absolute shot to the helmet. No one cares about that. And maybe I'm off base here. I highly doubt I am. But no, unless you are a rival of that player, no one was just begging to watch helmet on helmet collisions. They wanted to see Peyton Manning at his best, Tom Brady at his best, Randy Moss at his best. They wanted to see LaDainian Tomlinson dominating. They wanted to see whatever. It wasn't just it's not just about the violent aspect of it.
News for another big hit that's putting him on suspension.
That's a running back.
It's a hard hit. Yeah. Does he is it intentional? I don't know. I mean, he's got a bad rap now. Some of these hits, I feel like the hit in Green Bay game was probably unnecessary. As far as it seemed like he had some time to think about that one, but things are happening so quick in the league. Who am I to judge? I haven't played defense. I don't know what it's like to, in a moment, have to change your strike zone significantly or think you're going to hit a guy in a certain spot and to be able to have your eyes open the entire time to move your spot slightly or take your head just slightly to the left so you're not hitting the guy in the head. It's very difficult to play defense, and I think there's some intent involved in most of these hits that it's not malicious intent. It's part of the collision nature of the sport. Do you go back now and review plays and try and figure out intent? That creates a whole interesting can of worms that they couldn't handle a few years back when they tried to review pass interference.
Well, we all could. We all could.
I know, but I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. There's a lot of great referees in the NFL. There's a lot of great ones who've retired over the last, good bit. And the majority of those great ones who retired are on TV now because the money is high and they can do great. And we've talked about this many, many times. Gene Steratore is phenomenal, right? But if they could give Gene or Dean or Mike Pereira or Terry McAuley, these guys who were fantastic NFL refs, the opportunity to kind of take that over with the right type of pay, and then they were willing to do it, I think you could see some interesting ability to make these a little bit more interpretable.
I think the penalty conversation, the ref conversation, the hits conversation, all that stuff, I think that is just that's like the distraction argument. It's like when a head coach says, "Yo, we just got to be better at executing." It's like, okay, that's just a cliche, like throwaway, doesn't mean anything kind of thing. That's what it is to me. It's something that people go to quickly, like it's something that everyone kind of just says, "Oh, well, they're taking the hitting out, or the penalties are ridiculous, or the referees are bad, or whatever." But I think it's much more simple. People want to watch, or same like boxing. Like it's as simple as the characters, the boxers, the storylines aren't as good as they used to be, so people don't want to watch. There's nothing to do with the corruption or the scoring or the punches or whatever, the violence. It's just about people like those characters, they like those storylines, they like those narratives, so they watched. That's it. It's nice and simple. And now no one knows who the hell these boxers are. Absolutely no clue who they are as a person or storyline wise, so they don't watch. Boom. That easy. NFL, same thing. People want to watch excellence. They want to watch. Baseball just went through this. It was as simple as people don't like watching 1-0 games with ground outs and the shift. That's it. It's nothing to do with the umpires, the strike zones, the pitch clock, the this, the that. People just like watching home runs, 100-mile-an-hour fastball strikeouts. They like watching good players do good things. Nobody wants to see the best player in Major League Baseball ground out to a shift because there's 11 people on one side of the field. Simple. Same with the NFL. Like the NFL right now it's directly correlated, I think, with unders. It's like the primetime under streak is insane right now. Monday Night Football has had, I think, 11 out of the 12 games have been unders. There's not a lot of scoring. Scoring is down. Why? Because offensive efficiency is down. People hate watching that. I don't like watching it either. I don't like watching the Steelers-Browns game. I watched that entire game. Not a fun watch. Not a fun watch at all. On the flip side, if it's a good game, if Chiefs-Eagles, okay, cool. We're watching some excellence here. We're watching Patrick Mahomes, watching Jalen Hurts. That's very different than watching DTR versus Kenny Pickett. So the more that we talk about what Rodgers is talking about here, the more they're overcomplicating something that I don't think is very complicated.
A little bit, more in the nature of the rule, and maybe change some of these bad habits that I think have been created. But
the two names you didn't mention. The two names you didn't mention from the official standpoint: Walt Anderson, Alberto Riveron. They're the ones that have been in charge. All those good refs you just said. TV. Who's in charge of doing the pass interference they were doing first? Oh, Alberto Riveron. Yeah, he's the guy that's got to do it.
Listen, I like Walt. I always like Walt.
I don't.
Okay, I like both Walts. I like him, Walt Coleman.
If you had the greatest referees of all time in the games, it would not change the product whatsoever.
Coleman.
I like Walt Anderson.
There's been a lot of great ones. And Jeff Triplett, Mike Carey. There's a lot of guys who retired over the last 10 or 15 years. They were a big part of my career, and I appreciate those guys. But you need to get one of those guys, in my opinion, you get Gene, because he's the best. Get him in a position where you pay him enough money, whatever the hell he wants. Just so
would not
you can interpret the rules, I think, in the true nature of how it needs to be interpreted. And honestly, the refs would be great with that, I think. I think the refs would love that. And I think Gene could do a great job, and he explains things really well on TV, but you'd have to give him the right kind of money and have to give him the opportunity to enact some real change, but I think in the long run be in the best interest of the sport moving forward, so we don't keep going down the slippery slope of really taking the quarterback into more of a flag football environment, which, listen, I mean, maybe there's some guys that want it. I never wanted it. Like, I feel like
that's what I was saying with the 7-on-7. It is more emphasis on that, and they have backed themselves into a corner because they have made a lot of emphasis on the quarterback position, but now the quarterbacks are bad. So now they're in a position where it's like rats. We just put the magnifying glass on these guys, and they are terrible. They are not good. You can see why the NFL was doing this, though, when the NFL was full of good quarterbacks. They want those guys to be the face of the franchise. They want those guys to shine, so they put in the rules to help them shine. I don't think they thought, like, what happens if we have bad quarterbacks? What happens if every team basically has a bad quarterback? What happens if there's only 5 quarterbacks in the league that are really good at all? And that's what we're seeing right now. We could go down the schedule and look at this and be like, do we really want to put a spotlight on Aiden O'Connell? Do we really want to put a spotlight on Tommy DeVito? Do we really want to put a spotlight on Desmond Ridder and Baker Mayfield? Do we want to put a spotlight on Zach Wilson? Do we want to put a spotlight on PJ Walker, DTR, Kenny Pickett? Is that what we really want? And you probably sit there and say, no, that's not what we want. That this has become a nightmare. Like, this is not good. We have screwed the pooch here. You know, but is that a fleeting situation? Because when we get good quarterbacks, when we get that good play, when it swings back the other way, then it probably will be fun to watch.
Like being hit is part of the game, and obviously I've taken some shots, and one of the shots I took changed one of the rules. You know, I got hit by a bar. I didn't think that was a dirty hit by a bar. I was more upset. I felt like he flipped me off after the play, which I guess we went back and talked about it. He hadn't actually done that.
We'll know in the playoffs. In the playoffs, if we're sitting back and we're like, man, this is a terrible product. If we're watching, you know, the Eagles and the Cowboys in a playoff game, and we're sitting here saying, this is just kind of a weak product, then we'll know. But if the playoffs are good and we're getting some exciting play from the highest level quarterbacks, and it's an enjoyable watch, then we'll know that I'm right, that none of this has any impact on the game whatsoever.
Or actually, I think I flipped him off. He gave me the suck it sign. But I guess it wasn't in reference to each other, so we cleared that up. And,
I was telling somebody else to suck it.
Yeah, not you.
Yeah, I was telling you to suck it. You already did suck it. I just sacked you. I was talking to somebody else.
But I didn't feel like it was a dirty hit. There was, I didn't get the ball out quick enough. He was able to grab me in a certain way, and it was unfortunately a football play that went bad for me. Tom got hit low and lost his ACL. I don't know if that was an intentional shot down there. I think cleaning that part of it up. But then, the way you can't hit guys now, guys are going low more. I don't know if that creates more injury.
That's what I'm saying. Like, can you imagine being like, what's your favorite part of watching the NFL? Ooh, I love whenever people get hit low. Ooh, yes. Like, I just love watching quarterbacks get hit low. Man, there's nothing I'd rather do than sit back on the couch all day on a Sunday and just watch quarterbacks just get hit around the knees. I really, really, really like that. Like, who cares? No one cares about that. So put the rule in. Protect the quarterback. You don't want people to get injured. This has nothing to do with the watchability of the game. Is eliminating low hits on quarterbacks.
You have to go and look at that, or more issues. But I think it's really hard to play defense, and I don't know if there's a clear-cut way of changing things. But people enjoy the collision part of it. Nobody wants the crazy spearing out there. But I think there's a happy medium somewhere in the middle.
Where was it in college this weekend? There was a guy in college that actually said, "Hey, here's video for you guys to show."
Boston College at Pitt.
On the targeting. This dude, safety, comes flying in and literally jumps like dolphin out of water with helmet, looking for somebody else's helmet. It's like in the middle of it, it's like, all right, we believe that the intent there seems to be helmet to helmet, and there is a zero use of a hand or a shoulder in this entire thing. But I think intent can get read. And you talk about Gene Steratore being the guy with the feel and being the right guy. They had Walt Anderson dropping in Monday Night Football. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Walt Anderson dropped into Monday Night Football and said, the reason why we called this was this. It's like Gene not only being on CBS, but being on everywhere, especially in his primetime games where most people are watching. That's good for everybody. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and handle that, Aaron. Let's do that.
I think it'd be great. I really do. And I think Terry does a really good job on TV as well. And, there's some really good ones who have moved on.
I don't know, guys. I just don't think Gene Steratore is the answer. But let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think the NFL is mediocre? Do you think watching the product is mediocre? Am I off base with this collision situation? Like, is that what people want? Do you want to see? Do you watch the game for the more violent, the better, the more low hits on the quarterback, the better, the more of that you're enjoying that product? Or do you think I'm right where it is just kind of a weird quarterback time where the guys that we're watching the most of, the guys that are being protected, the guys who are supposed to kind of carry the product from a watchability standpoint aren't very good. You know, where do you kind of fall in this? Maybe somewhere in the middle. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.